It is the morning of Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, and that means that we are celebrating the autumnal equinox on this Wisdom Wednesday. So I encourage anyone who's watching this video who wants to celebrate the equinox to find ways of honoring balance today. I always have lovely resources for how to practice your own ceremony in our village, and you can always reach out to me if you want help creating a little ceremony, just a little moment to mark for yourself this important moment in time for our planet. And as you engage with this video or engage with any of these materials, I encourage you to kind of drop into that sense of balance, of being sort of right in the center, a sense of gratitude, a sense that even when things are challenging, there's always something here that is beautiful, that is kind, and that is worth celebrating. Our theme of the month is pleasure and peace. And what I'm going to share now are just some of my reflections on this topic. And I'm very, very eager to hear about your reflections and your questions. We've got a little more time this month, and I'm planning on, in some ways, continuing to engage with similar themes for the end of the year. So I do really invite us to start a conversation about it at this point. So I find that I'm not always able to be at peace with pleasure. And what is pleasure? Pleasure, which is called sukha in Sanskrit, is that feeling that we get in our bodies that things are going pretty good, that we're getting our needs met, that we're not in a moment of illness or injury, and we're in a moment of harmony. Last month we talked about dukkha, pain, discomfort. My teacher Nisargadatta says that pain is very, very important, and that pain is a lesson, it's a warning, it's an indication, it's information. And information is inherently valuable, even if that information feels a little uncomfortable to discover, right? So pleasure is comfortable information. It's information that for whatever reason, feels good. And so it's been really interesting for myself to discover that sometimes I have a hard time experiencing pleasure, being really present with pleasure, being accepting of that experience. And I know I'm not alone. A lot of the people that I work with or come to me, to help them with their meditation practice or their energy work or whatever. And a lot of just my friends, because we're people who like to talk about our process a lot. So I know this is true for a lot of people in my world. They also can have a really hard time making peace with pleasure, relaxing back into experiences where everything's kind of okay. And I think that there are many, many reasons for this. Why for a lot of us this is hard. One is disrupted nervous systems. Being at peace and I invited you all to reflect on this for yourselves. So I'm curious to see what you discovered. What does peace mean? How is peace different than pleasure? Why are we talking about? But for me, peace means a sense that we're not resisting or attaching, right? We're not um, we're not trying to make something different than it is. We're not trying to use our pleasure to get something better, more pleasure maybe, or some kind of other reward. So to be at peace with pleasure really kind of means to be okay with the pleasure that is, not seeking more, not wondering if we're allowed to have it or not, anyway. So this state of being at peace with a pleasurable experience requires us, so we can't really be at peace ever with anything with a really dysregulated nervous system. In other words, if we're in fight or flight mode, if we're experiencing a lot of fear, if we're not feeling in that kind of balance and harmony and alignment that we were working toward in our Equinox meditation this morning, if we don't have that just kind of physiological state, our system, our wise animal natural system won't let us be at peace with our pain or our pleasure. It keeps us in this sort of heightened state that keeps telling us to do something, fix something. It tells us we don't have the luxury of relaxing. And that relaxation state is necessary on that physiological level in order to experience peace. So that's one reason why I think a lot of us have a hard time with it. It's just our dysregulated nervous systems. Yeah. Another big reason that I have tracked for myself for sure is more on a psychological level. It has more to do with my identity and my stories about myself and my stories about the world. And I have discovered that I have some stories that say that certain people deserve pleasure and certain people don't, or I only deserve pleasure if I have earned it in some way. I'll relax as soon as I just finish this task, or etc. I have tracked for myself that I do this sort of, I've kind of internalized this kind of punishing God, this punishing version of Great Spirit. And that voice will be in my head, often. And when I do something that I don't feel good about, that I don't feel was good enough, or that I feel like screwed something up, or made more work for myself down the line, something that hurt someone else, anything that goes against my values in any way, I tend to go into a shame spiral, and I'm internally beating myself up with words, internal dialogue. I keep myself in a gesture of somebody being like, I am simultaneously my abuser and the abused victim of this shaming process. And often those around me don't even know I'm doing it. I'm doing it all inside, and and I realized that this is a place where I cannot feel pleasure. I have trained myself that the pleasure is the reward that I didn't deserve, and that pain is the consequence that I do deserve, and it keeps me in a space of non-acceptance. It keeps one part of me having to be very diligent and disciplining and like I have to like ride the other part of myself and be in that way very kind of hyper vigilant. And then the other part of me is constantly in this sort of defense and like fear state of the victim. Um, so how do I work on that? I mean, it's a process, and really I'm really using several approaches at once. But you know, the main thing is really first of all recognizing that I have had to do some work around my self-worth actually, and my inherent sense of deservedness. I notice I now it's you know all starts with awareness, just it starts with that witness. But witnessing now in experiences like that, witnessing what's going on, seeing all these parts playing these roles, and then doing what I can to bring in a gesture and a posture and an attitude of gentleness, kindness. I might say some kind words, bring in a kind of third voice besides the villain and the victim, one of kindness, the inner teacher who says, that's actually bullshit, Aaron, all that shaming, all that stuff. It's just old conditioning. You are worthy, you are lovable. And it is healthy and kind of necessary for you right now to allow yourself a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of just relaxation, a little room from the feeling punishment. Um, I'd say those are those are kind of the two main reasons for me that I have a hard time experiencing pleasure. But of course, there are others. You know, I don't know about you, but I wasn't taught. I wasn't taught about how to enjoy pleasure. You know, you're given treats when you're a kid, but no one ever taught me how to sit there and just taste it, you know, and just lean into that experience. And in my household, it was, you know, we were also very, very poor when I was really little. But there was a kind of a sense of like, like, uh, you know, we ate really fast. Everything was sort of, again, kind of survival mode. And I didn't learn, how to do pleasure, really. I kind of learned like grab them while you can. And so I'm curious, you know, what kind of you learned about it or didn't learn. Um, I I I know this is true about me. I also think that I know that our modern society really encourages this in a lot of ways or makes it hard to avoid this. But I'm so busy and so distracted a lot of the time that I can't relax into pleasure that doesn't feel available. And yeah, and I think that just you know one last sort of reflection that's just intermingled with all of these for myself is realizing that lack a feeling of a lack of resources and the necessary fear that comes with that. This is almost back right to our animal physiological nervous system level. Um, the majority of the people on the planet right now who are very poor, vast majority of this planet, how are how are we supposed to be able to, you know, relax that nervous system when there's such real need for so many of us, material need just to survive. And then, of course, again, deeper than that, these spiritual needs that we have that maybe aren't being serviced by our culture. Um, Psychological needs, you know, we're in a mental health crisis right now in our country and beyond. And reflecting this way gives me a lot of compassion for myself and all of us, uh, which is again a really helpful ingredient here is just some gentleness and some compassion and some understanding that for most of us we come at this topic from these kind of disadvantages, from these challenges that are totally valid, you know. So something that I want to present today is, and this is sort of the core concept that I just want to present today, something that's been really helping me as I try to learn how to make peace with moments of pleasure and how to really enjoy them. Something that's been really helpful for me is this concept of being satisfiable. Being satisfied and satisfiable. To be satisfiable means to be in an attitude or a posture to be set up so that we are available for satisfaction. Satisfaction, this is something you could do some inquiry into, like what does that mean to you? How does that word work on you? But for me, what I'm talking about is a sense of feeling complete, of feeling like it's enough, and not like it's too much and I need to get rid of some of it, and then there's no avoidance. Just yes, yeah, that's good. And there's yeah. So I would love for you to also join me in this kind of reflection on satisfaction this week, and in being satisfiable. What I'm realizing that this for me serves as a sort of antidote for is the kind of two prongs or two flavors of or the two gestures of non-satisfaction: raga and devesha. These are our kleshas. So we learn, you know, we've talked about this a lot, I think, that pain, you know, something we were really looking at last month, and pleasure, what we're looking at this month, right? These are two, that these pairs do not on their own cause suffering or bliss. It's more about how we respond to their presence. Pleasure and pain are a little bit more like night and day, spring and fall. We're on the equinox, and we're reflecting on these things. They go together. They belong to one process. And our pain and our pleasure are just giving us information physiologically, pretty much, right? This is what we talked about at the beginning of that. So what causes us suffering is when we respond to our pain and our pleasure with raga and devesha, attachment. The attachment meaning craving, desiring, chasing, manipulating things and trying to organize things. So I get that. I want to get that, right? I want that. And the attachment, the raga, comes along with sort of actions, words, thoughts, all the things that we do to manipulate our way toward the object of attachment. Or if we have the object of attachment, to keep it, to trap it, to freeze it in time so that it's with us always like this, right? How are you with your objects of attachment? Even though that is our pleasure object, or at least we associate it with pleasure, most of that attachment process and experience is pretty painful, right? The way I see it, what we're really doing when we're in attachment, the deeper thing that we want is satisfaction. We don't just want to grab this pleasure and lock it up in a cage, keep it with us always, and no one else can touch it. But that's the kind of energy that we usually have in attachment, right? Doing all those things, we know, doesn't necessarily actually really bring us what we really want, because it turns out it's not just some sukha. We want satisfaction, that kind of completeness. Okay, and so the other gesture besides raga is devesha, and devesha is that opposite. That's where I'm going to manipulate everything so that I can avoid something that I've associated as painful. All that avoidance, that running in the opposite direction, that denying, that maybe we try to obliterate it. Maybe we go on a campaign and try to just get rid of whatever that is that we decided brings us pain or takes away our pleasure. We want to get rid of it from the face of the earth. Whatever our strategy is, one is one becomes a kind of greediness and the other becomes war. What do we really want when we're doing indivesha and we're saying no, stay away from me, you know? Even if it's something like fair enough, stay away from me, processed sugar or whatever. But what I'm saying is that if we can start to recognize that this kind of sense of being satisfiable, being satisfied, and we can really start to tap into as much as we can experiences of satisfaction, we start to actually taste what we really want out of all of this, that we never actually accomplish when we're stuck in the raga devesha cycle, when we're stuck chasing our pleasure and running away from our pain. It turns out that's one process, right? And just like fall and spring are part of one thing we call a year, right? Or a full season cycle. Just like night and day are part of one thing, right? As the earth moves around the sun. Raga and devesha are part of one process of suffering. And we have to kind of experience that bigger third thing, to experience a bigger third thing in order to get free from the trap of the binary that makes us feel always in opposition. The two binaries aren't in opposition. Night and day aren't opposed. They're one thing. They go together. It's like yin and yang. And that Tao symbol is the third bigger thing. That once we kind of tap into what the Tao is, we stop being distracted and confused and pulled astray by the illusion that yin and yang are opposites. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. And so if you do have any questions about this topic or anything you wanna mention, you can either type it into the chat box, or in a couple of minutes, I'll give you an opportunity to unmute yourself if you'd like to share that way. So I'm inviting you to inquire into what satisfaction is, to kind of see if you can feel into moments of it, to see if this makes sense to you, that it's what we really want. And I'm going to offer a few other kind of entryways or words for this for you now, but please do explore it. And one inquiry question that I've been playing with that I'll add to our inquiry this month is, in any moment of decision, big or small, experiment with this. What will be the most satisfying? Reflect on experiences of satisfaction you've had in the past. My most satisfying experiences, tell you what, they're a mix of discomfort and just wonderful peace and joy. But my most satisfying experiences have certainly not been sitting around just, I don't know, awash in like pleasure. What really satisfies me is, let's say, going on a hike and then eating that big meal, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So an interesting way to reframe our decisions or what we want and desire. I think that's another struggle that I know I've had, is I've been trying to teach myself how to experience pleasure fully. I'll often say, like, what do I really want? And sometimes that framing of it for me is a little confusing. I can't really tell what's the like kind of more addictive attachment wanting and what's that sort of deeper wanting. And this question has been helping me on that lately. What will be the most satisfying? I also just wanted to connect this to connect this to the theme of peace, right? Which is actually what I named it. Maybe I should have named it something about satisfaction, but pleasure and satisfaction. But anyway, but to me they are related, because when we're at peace, that is, we're at peace with whatever is. I can be at peace with my pain. I can be at peace with my pleasure. Peace is inherently satisfying. It's an inherently satisfying and satisfied experience, right? There's nothing missing. There's nothing extra. We're not trying for anything else, because what is enough, and it's right. So, the Sanskrit word for that is shanti. Shanti. Another important word that we can connect is samadhi. The experience of enlightenment is that experience of the shanti that just lasts. We realize now that we never have and never will need more or less than this. That's just living in that experience. And another nice Sanskrit word I'll go ahead and throw in here that probably correlates the best to satisfaction is santosha, which just means contentedness. Tosha comes from the root tush, which means to please, to be pleased. It's to be pleased, really. Yeah. And tushyati, yeah. And san, which is also the prefix for samadhi, though because of some little rules in the language, the M and the N change into each other at times. Anyway, same prefix on that word, which means complete, total. I'm complete in my pleasedness, is what Santosha really means. And this, some of you may know, this is one of our niyamas from the 8 limbs of yoga, from the Yoga Sutras. One of the things that we always want to be cultivating is this sense of contentedness, satisfaction in what is. So to close, I don't see any comments yet. So to close, like I said, play around with this idea of satisfaction and embodying that and experimenting what it means for you. Do things just because they're pleasurable. Now, this has been a really big key for me. Really huge key for me, as I've gone through some big challenges in my life lately and some health challenges. Sometimes it's better for me to go do something really pleasurable or stay up a little late, even though my health problems really need me to get a lot of sleep. Sometimes that sense of satisfaction from doing something just because it's pleasurable gives me more energy than the lack of sleep takes away. I guess is what I'm saying, is just being disciplined and just doing everything perfectly can actually sometimes take us further away from pleasure. And that sometimes what we need is to inject some play and some almost frivolity, or like find things in your day and your week that, again, you're just doing for you. They don't have some bigger purpose or end. A lot of things that I enjoy, I then made into work. And then I have to like work to keep them from getting kind of sucked into that kind of like constant workiness that keeps me from experiencing pleasure. Workiness. Yeah. Oh, and now we're seeing a couple of little comments, which is awesome. This will likely take you on a journey if you're going around trying to experience new things just for pleasure. If you're going kind of against maybe some things that you've done in the past, You're learning new things. Guess what? Every satisfying adventure comes with some discomfort. Notice that. So I want you to, as you do this work, stay in the witness seat. The witness, the witness, the witness always comes back to the witness. Witness all these things that come up for you as you do this. Notice what feels painful and notice how you respond. Notice the moments of pleasure. Notice how you respond. Notice that inner dialogue and those inner responses. And let me know how it goes. Now we've got a couple of comments and I'll respond to those. Holly says, I love the idea of framing the question as satisfaction. Yeah, it's a good one. It's in a way a new entry for me. Yeah, so keep working with that, Holly. I'm glad that resonates with you, and I'm very curious to see where you go with that. Pamela says, ditto, the idea of becoming satisfiable, so helpful. This is good. I get a little confused about contentment and pleasure. Isn't contentment the same as pleasure at times? Okay, great. How do we use curiosity? She also asks to help give more info about pleasure. Okay, I'll start with the last question because I was just kind of speaking to this, I think, as you were typing, but be curious about how you respond, about what your conditioning actually is. I told you a little bit about how I often actually respond to pleasure by being like, oh, I'm not allowed to have that. I'm in a shame moment. I'm being punished right now, or being punishing. No, that doesn't fit in. I've been doing that for a lot of my life and I was not really aware of it. So be curious, observing ourselves as the witness is the best, fastest, truest, most long-lasting way to get the results of changing. Because once we observe, that process is underway. And if instead we just have ideas about what we should be and what we should do, those ideas stay in the idea realm. They just spin around and around. They don't change anything. But if you observe, it will start to shift. So apply that curiosity because it matters, and because our attention, our witness, our awareness is the most important ingredient in all of this. Okay. And then confused about contentment and pleasure. Okay, now I will explain this. All right. And I'll explain it through Yoga Sutras. In the Yoga Sutras, we have our kleshas, we have our causes of suffering. They're also described as the obstacles to our spiritual path. They're the obstacles to us realizing samadhi, for realizing our true nature, are these kleshas, okay? The kleshas are the stories we tell ourselves, our identities, raga and devesha. This is what we talked about before, right? Grasping and pushing, and fear. Guess what's not on that list? Sukha and dukkha, pain and pleasure. They're not on there. Pain and pleasure are things that happen to us because we're in a body. They are like night and day. They're like the left side and the right side, the front and the back of me. They belong together. They're always going to be a part of this equation. If you have a body, you need to have pleasure and pain to give you information. Satisfaction and suffering are what happen. So satisfaction is what happens when we're in right relationship with pleasure and pain. Because if you think of pleasure as like it's an experience. Yeah. And we could say I'm taking pleasure in my pleasure. It's a little confusing. Like some of this is just getting onto semantics. But what I'm saying, I'm distinguishing being satisfied as being the right response to pleasure or pain or discomfort. And that the suffering is caused when we try instead to respond with raga and devesha. So I'm in a way explaining, it's almost like, and I was trying to say, but there's this bigger third thing. It sounds like Pam gets it now, but there's this bigger third thing. One example, Pema Chodron uses this a lot, but this is a classic example, is there's the sky and there's a cloud and there's a bird and there's sun. Oh, look, there's some rain, whatever's going on in the sky. It's like pleasure and pain. It's an experience. It's a thing happening. How the sky itself is of a different order, and that would be being satisfiable. the relationship we have with that bird in the sky or that cloud in the sky, that's what we're in control of. You will not be able to just always manufacture pleasure or get rid of pain, but you can absolutely shift how you respond. Holly says, it seems like asking about satisfaction helps differentiate experience. So you see what is simply distraction. Yes. Yes. That's a good way of putting it. I know we're at time now. This is when we usually end, if not before. So I am going to wrap it up. There's a quote that John Samuel left us before he had to leave the Zoom room a couple minutes ago. So let's see what that has to say. Splendor in the Grass poem. Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower, we will grieve. We will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind. That's beautiful. I don't know where that's from. There's no writer attributed to it, but he says it's a poem in a movie. So we can look further into that. We can apply our curiosity to that, but that's beautiful. And yes, I think that I'll close with this reflection that all of these moments are precious. And even when we are in discomfort or pain, that's being alive, that's being aware, that's participating in all of this splendor and beauty. And the moments when things are sweet and harmonious, those moments of the splendor in the grass, the glory in the flower, enjoy them and know that they're going to pass and that the temporariness of everything just makes it all more precious. Let that be your impetus to slow down and to make room for that pleasure to be. And don't waste your time sort of grasping after it or grieving after it. We'd have to grieve naturally sometimes, that's part of life, but make room for the sweetness and drink it up when you get it. You absolutely deserve it. It is for you. And we need it. We need to have those experiences. We crave it and we thrive on it. Thank you very much for being here this morning. Happy Equinox.